Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Mead. I'm the Director of Carers Scotland, and we host the Carer Positive project. I'm going to do a short introduction, and I believe someone will have to click my slides forward for me because I don't think I have control. So, Alan, would you mind moving on to the next slide, please? There is the outline of today's event. As you can see, we've got quite a lot to get through in the next 2 hours. So I will try and be as brief as I can because we're sort of running a little bit over already. So it's going to be a great event, and I think it's great to see so many people on the call. And I think, we've got a really good agenda. So if we just move on to the next slide, please, Alan. And yes, as I understand it, there is going to be, if you've not used menti.com, I'm assuming there will be an explanation at some point about how to do that. From you, Alan.
Yes, it is, yes.
Excellent. So after I've done my opening remarks, I believe Alan will explain to you about Menti. So will we come back to this slide after my slides, Alan?
If you wish to, yes.
Yeah, okay then, right. Well, skip on to the next slide for me then, please. That would be great. So just to give you a bit of context and background, you probably all know this, but Carers Week is the annual campaign to raise awareness of caring and to highlight the challenges that unpaid carers face, as well as recognise the contribution they make to families and communities throughout the UK, not to mention a health and social care system. And actually, I think it's always worth pointing this fact out. If you took all the hours that unpaid carers provide across Scotland and put a price against it, then what it actually equates to is that every year unpaid carers contribute 13.1 billion in towards our health and social care system in Scotland. That is absolutely massive. Our total budget in what we spend on health and social care in Scotland is around 19 billion a year. So quite simply, if carers decided to stop caring today, the health and social care system would absolutely collapse tomorrow. If I could get the next slide, please, Alan. And thank you. Every year we have different themes for Carers Week, and this year the theme is around identifying carers and the important role that we can all play in identifying carers, and most importantly, helping them to get the support they need and are entitled to. It's also about helping those many people who are caring who don't actually see themselves as a carer. They often see themselves as a mum or a husband or a son or a daughter or whatever their role is. They don't recognise or identify themselves as a carer, and as a result they can miss out on much needed support and help that they're entitled to, whether that is financial support like carers allowance or other hardship funds that might be available locally, a break from caring, access to respite services, or just the possibility of putting together a plan to sort of talk about what's important to them, what they might need help with, where to get further information. So much of that can be missed by those who do not recognise themselves as carers or who are not identified, and it's everyone's responsibility to help identify carers, and that has been a really important theme of this year's Carers Week. And if I could get the next slide as well, please, Alan. And this year, to sort of launch Carers Week, we did some polling work with the polling company QCov around the issue of identifying carers, and it came back with some really interesting and quite sort of startling findings for Scotland, and the poll suggested that 20% of Scotland's adults are currently providing unpaid care. Now, we normally estimate it's between 700 and 800,000. This poll suggests nearly 900,000, and I think that's part of the challenge, as you probably all know, is that because we don't recognise and don't identify, and not everybody sees themselves as a carer, then to understand the exact number of people who are out there providing unpaid care is a number we just don't know, but it's really, really high. We're talking close to 1 million people in Scotland. That's 1 in 7, I think, maybe even a bit close to 1 in 6 of the population are providing unpaid caring. And actually, when we asked as part of this poll how many people had provided unpaid care but weren't currently providing it, and another 30%. So it roughly works out that nearly half of Scotland's adults have at some point or are currently providing unpaid care. That's nearly or just over 2 million people, and of those, about nearly 2/3 of them have not seen themselves as a carer. So going back to that identification piece and who sees themselves as a carer, that's a lot of people not recognising it's that they are carers, and obviously the risk that that can mean to them getting the support they need is substantial. And those that do identify as a carer, actually it can take them a while to realize that's the role that they're playing, and we see that I think it's a third saw that they did so immediately. So that means 2/3 of carers take some time to work out that that is their role and that's what they're doing. And that again can suggest that they might be missing out on really valuable and important support. And in terms of employment, well, the role of employment and in caring can be hugely significant. It helps obviously provide financial security for somebody who's working, but also offers everything from a life outside of caring, a role that they value, and a career that's important to them. And those are hugely valuable, and we must try and do more to support people to remain in care, to remain in work, as well as being able to care. And the workplace can obviously play a hugely significant role for carers, both actually in terms of identifying them, but also supporting them so that they can continue to work and continue to care, which is of both benefit to the carer themselves, but also to the employer, because they get to keep access to that highly skilled workforce that they have. And so it's in both interests that actually the workplace supports carers. At Carers Scotland, we're really proud to host the Carer Positive project, which works with so many employers across Scotland to help create workplaces that are truly recognise and value carers. And that is a really, I think, important contribution that we can make. And Sue will obviously talk to you about that next. So I'm delighted that we have this event today where we'll hear so much from different organisations and get a chance to have a discussion. I think actually one of the things that this is day 5 of Carers Week, and the different events that I've been at, I think actually the presentations have been great, but actually it's the discussion that's been really valuable. So I'm looking forward to that part of the morning, and also using the menti.com to vote, which is always good fun. But that is all I wanted to say, and to say I hope we have a really good morning. Alan, I'm not sure if I'm passing back to you to explain Menti, or if I'm giving over to Sue to talk about Carer Positive.
I'll do the pre-event questionnaire stuff just now.
Brilliant.
So I'll go.
Thanks, Alan.
I'll roll back, everyone. Okay. There's a couple of ways around this. If you want to use your camera on your phone, you can scan the QR code and it will take you directly to the pre-event questionnaire. However, if you don't have access to your phone, or your phone, sometimes some phones don't really automatically do QR code links, go to menti.com and put in the 8-digit code at the bottom, the 79504779, and it'll actually take you to the questionnaire itself. It's a fairly quick questionnaire, it's not very many questions at all. So I'm just going to switch off the presentation just now so that I can go on to the actual live results and give them to you as we go on. So I'll speak to you in a second. If anyone's got any problems, give me a shout.
Alan, did you see Gail's message in the chat?
Yeah, sorry, I just tried it at menti.com and it's just given me code could not be found.
Was that popping the link in, Gail, not the
No, that's just coming up, going on to menti.com and then entering the code, but I didn't try the link. I don't have access to my mobile phone, so
right.
I'll give you a new code. I've reset it.
Technology's great when it works.
That's it. That should be your code now. I can put up another QR if anyone needs that. Give me a second.
thank you. That's me now, thanks.
Oh, brilliant, that's great. The results coming in, Alan?
I'm just about to check.
Fantastic.
Second. Let's have a look. Yep, we're getting them in now. Got 3 results so far.
It's helpful to know the audience in terms of where everybody's at, and that will obviously help Sue when she goes in to do her presentation.
Absolutely.
I've actually just done it, which is a bit daft because I'm not necessarily one of the audience, but I just did want to try the Menti thing. But yeah, that's.
Last questions had 4 answers, which is, do you think of yourself as a carer? So 2 say yes, 2 say no. Very interesting. 3 answers on have you had the Carer Positive Awards? 1 yes, 2 no. The results for did the organisation you work for have Carer Positive status, showing us 1 yes for established, 1 yes for engaged, and 1 yes exemplary, which is really good.
Are we ready just to move on then, Alan, or are we still
got a few answers there. Has everyone put their answers in?
I'll take the silence as a yes.
That's fine. I'll bring the slides
Right,
back up.
fantastic.
Right, we'll go on to Sue's bit now.
Thanks, Alan.
No problem.
Alan, would you mind? I know you're moving slides on, but I think would you mind sharing, allowing me to do that, because I think I've got quite a lot of slides that I'll probably want to get through quite quickly. So just rather than keep asking you,
that's fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. Just you choose to share then, Sue. Not a problem.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'll sit back.
Right. Okay. So is the presentation still there then? Yeah, it's.
Yep. You want you've got your copy, haven't you? So.
All right. Sorry. No, I was hoping just to get in from the one that you had up. It's fine. Just rather than faff about, we'll just do what we were doing. It's fine. Just you can share it.
2 seconds. Here we go.
Okay. Right. Thanks very much. Okay, so just a brief bit of context, and I have got quite a lot of slides, so I don't want to spend too much time on this because, as Richard says, the discussion's more helpful than anything, and we can share slides at the end of the presentation as well. And I'm sure most people here are aware of the significant number of people in Scotland who are juggling work with caring responsibilities. And officially that number is estimated to be around about 270,000, but we know because people don't identify themselves as carers that it's likely to be a lot higher than that. And you know that can equate to 1 in 7 or 1 in 8 in the workplace. Essentially, it's a significant and growing population within within the labour market and within organisations. And without the right support in place, we also know that many carers sadly give up work to care or they cut their hours, and that can lead to financial difficulties if it's not something that is sort of fits with their situation. There was a report in 2019, in fact, that said across the UK, 600 people every day were giving up work to care. So this isn't good for carers, it's not good for their families, but it's also not good for employers and the economy. There's a loss of skills and experience, and many carers who have been working in organisations for years have built up a lot of skills and experience. And for employers, it can be a significant loss to them if those skilled and valuable members of staff give up work to care because they're not supported in the workplace. And if I can have the next slide, please, Alan. Thanks. And I think also most people here will be aware of the challenges of juggling work and care, and the impacts on health and well-being. We know that some of the kind of challenges are including the very obvious ones like tiredness and stress and anxiety, but you'll appreciate there are a lot of other much, a whole range of impacts and feelings and physical and mental emotions that are impacted by caring. And having that on top of a working day, can really be incredibly difficult. There can be a lack of understanding in the workplace that can make those feelings much more difficult and challenging. We know that carers can find that their careers and their progression can be limited, but also in addition to the internal challenges within workplaces, there are the external factors. If there aren't services and supports in the community, then that can be equally difficult as well. So it's not just about having sort of access to flexibility and policies within the workplace, but carers need that external support as well. Obviously, the additional recent pressures that were brought about by COVID and more recently the cost of living have added another layer again to the challenges that working carers are facing. And can I have the next slide, please? And more recently, we know that there's a growing body of evidence around the impact of work and care, but the state of caring research that takes place across the UK every year, looks at a whole range of impacts that caring has on people's lives. And there's another one about to be kind of happening this summer. But last year, and looking particularly at the focus within that on working carers, 75% of carers who responded to the survey said that they worried about juggling work and care, and 65% had given up opportunities at work because of caring. We know also that carers on lower incomes are particularly impacted by the cost of living crisis. And one thing that was raised quite recently, in fact, was also the fact that a lot of carers who are leaving work early because they can't juggle work and care, or because it's coming too much, they're worried about the impact that that's having on building up a pension that they can afford, so that helps them afford to live in retirement. But interestingly, carers and employment, and going back to the whole focus of Carers Week around identification, working carers and employment are significantly more likely to say that they don't recognise themselves as carers. And that's possibly because they're working. They think if they're in full-time or part-time work, they wouldn't also term themselves as a carer. So there's a big role for employers to play in encouraging and enabling carers to recognise themselves and identify themselves at work so that they can get the support they need. And thanks. The next slide, please. So, looking a wee bit more closely at identification, there are a whole number of reasons why somebody might find it difficult, or they might not want to identify themselves to their employer or to their line manager. There might be a fear of what this might mean for their career. If they don't work somewhere where it's openly encouraged and they don't have the comfort of knowing that they work for a supportive employer, a lot of carers are worried about raising their sort of caring situation. and how that might be perceived by their colleagues or line manager. There might also be feelings of stigma and not feeling comfortable about sharing their particular situations. And that might be especially if somebody's caring for someone with a condition that they might not feel particularly happy about talking about. It might be they're caring for someone who's got a mental health issue or an addiction issue, and they might choose not to talk about that particular caring role, which is absolutely fine, but we want to kind of help carers. We want to help remove the stigma around talking about caring. There might also be cultural barriers in certain backgrounds. Many people don't use the term carer and they think it's just part of a family role. So there can be cultural barriers that would prevent carers from coming forward to talk about their caring role. But there can also be a lack of understanding and awareness from managers and employers, and inconsistent support and messages across organisations. And there might not be any kind of system in place to help or encourage carers to identify themselves, and no policies which actually reflect the needs of carers. Lots of workplaces have got really, quite far-reaching policies, but if they don't actually highlight carers within those, then it doesn't give anybody the comfort to actually come forward and identify themselves. So there are a whole range of reasons why carers might not feel comfortable about identifying themselves to their managers. And can I have the next slide, please, Alan? So for people who aren't aware of Carer Positive, and it's great to see some of you here who are already Carer Positive, but I'm conscious, obviously, that some of you aren't Carer Positive and you might not know much about it. It's a Scottish Government initiative that Carers Scotland delivers on behalf of the Scottish Government. It raises awareness of the growing number of people who are juggling work and care, and importantly, it tries to promote the business case to employers for supporting carers. There are a whole range of reasons why it makes good business sense for employers to support the health and well-being of staff who've got caring responsibilities. Similarly to any kind of health and well-being support in work, anything that helps people, it helps the retention of staff, helps the recruitment of staff, and helps people stay engaged and able to balance their work and caring role, is good for employers as well as carers. And the Carer Positive programme is an award scheme which recognises those employers who do have good practice in place. And currently there are over 250 Carer Positive employers across Scotland. And if we look at the next slide, I can give you a snapshot of what the process looks like. It's really straightforward, but we'll not go into that in any great detail. You can ask about that later, or you can ask anything in the chat. It's very flexible, and I would just remind everyone that because it's fully funded, it's free to take part, and we've got lots of support and resources. So the next slide should just give you a quick wee look at currently the employers across Lanarkshire, and it's important that North Lanarkshire is hosting this event, and we've got really close partnership working in North Lanarkshire, but it's important to remember that carers live in all parts of Lanarkshire, and many North Lanarkshire carers will be working in South Lanarkshire and vice versa. So we need to have a look at all the the employers in Lanarkshire who are currently carer positive, and it's really nice to see that there are over 35,100 employees working in those organisations across Lanarkshire, and we've got great support from local politicians, and it's lovely that Marion's here, and I know that she's going to speak in a wee while. A lot of good practice has been developed in these organisations, but I think what I would say is there's scope to reach many more employers in the area, and hopefully this will help progress some of the work to reach those wider employers. And if I can go on to the next slide, please. So just having a wee quick discussion over what good practice looks like, and having worked with employers over Scotland all these years, it's been lovely to see some of the some of the forms of support that have been developed. Just very sort of briefly talking about a number of these, but I think this is something to sort of tease out in some of the discussions. The good practice is embodied by having really clear policies where carers can see easily what the support there is for them, and they see themselves reflected in policies. It's good to see that a lot of organisations have got dedicated carers leave. We'll talk a wee bit more about that. That there are good opportunities for carers to be identified, that the organisation actually helps carers recognise themselves as carers, and there are chances for employers to kind of gather information and make sure that they're aware of the the support needs of all the sort of staff who've got caring responsibilities. There are quite formal systems, and there can be informal systems for doing that. Some organisations have got carers passports or registers. Some organisations will discuss caring within their one-to-ones or staff appraisals, but there are surveys and monitoring opportunities to kind of capture that information. It's really important that there are kind of strong and visible messages to carers at all levels of the organisation, and that there are opportunities obviously through staff intranets, through newsletters, through the induction process, and obviously in sort of raising awareness. The organisations take advantage of some of the training and e-learning and resources that are there, and it's really important in that regard to sort of link sometimes to your local carer centre and other organisations, because they can come in as external speakers and help with carer awareness. I think in raising awareness among staff as well and helping recognition, having carers case studies is really helpful in helping people recognise themselves in those situations. Lots of other things, access to health and wellbeing support and peer support is important to kind of tackle those feelings of loneliness and isolation that a lot of carers experience. And many organisations have set up carers networks, or they have access to online groups. Again, signposting to local carer centres is very helpful in being able to kind of facilitate that peer support as well. Really good organisations, I think one of the things that I've noticed is that you're aware of a very sort of strong culture of support, and that's visible from very sort of senior levels right down through all staff. And there are examples of how organisations do that. They might have carers champions. They also are keen to kind of gather carers' input and get feedback from carers, which is really helpful in how the support within an organisation develops in a meaningful way. But most importantly, there are just very positive messages that let carers know that they're valued and supported. And if we can go on to the next slide now, links to wider agendas are helpful for employers to understand as well. As we've come through COVID, there's been a huge development in how staff can work more flexibly. There's new models of work have been developed. There are hybrid models of working. All those give better flexibility for carers. So there are great opportunities to kind of, for employers to continue to look at how that develops. carer positive and supporting carers more generally fits very well with the whole aspirations around developing fairer and better working practices in Scotland. So there are other agendas that this aligns with well. I think it's important as well to not forget that there are many carers who are not working. So there are links to be explored, looking at developing employability and the whole sort of skills side of things to try to make sure that those carers who aren't working but who want to work have those opportunities to get back into employment as well. There are links also to wider inclusion, equality and diversity agendas that I know all organisations are kind of fulfilling those, you know, those aspirations as well. And lots of other things, but I think probably people are aware of the kind of wider strategies that this aligns well with. And I want to also touch briefly on forthcoming changes in legislation, which I think is on the next slide. And that's about workplace rights and support. And there is some limited rights that carers have within employment legislation. You know, that includes flexible working, it includes emergency dependence leave, it includes parental leave, and parents of disabled children and young people have got a wee bit more flexibility in how parental leave is applied. And there's also protection against discrimination if somebody's caring for somebody with a protected characteristic or a disability, you know, for example, a disability. But importantly, there is better support for carers coming. What has been the Carers Leave Bill that's been going through Parliament became the Carers Leave Act just very recently. And that's going to provide within employment statute for 5 days unpaid carers leave. It would be lovely if it was paid carers leave, but it's an important step forward. And many good employers do actually already provide paid leave, but this is going to really help raise awareness, and you know, employers are going to you know, have to provide that support for carers that they maybe haven't done already, and hopefully that'll then build. So it's a good opportunity at the moment to, you know, for employers to review the support they have and to look at how they can develop that. Just a quick look at our support and resources, which we will make available obviously after the presentation. And I think finally, the next slide will also show that we have new resources coming within the Carer Positive sort of set of resources, an e-learning guide that we're going to be launching very soon. And I think that concludes my part of the presentation. So
Thank you, Sue.
I think, yes, and it's on to the next slide, just gives some of the Carer Centre resources as well. The Carer Centre links, yeah.
We can put that slide back up at the end of the session. Thank you very much for that, Sue. If there's any questions that anybody has, if you can pop them in the chat or raise your hand. But what we'll do just now is, Colin, if we hand over to you to do your intro and your presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline, and thanks, Richard and Sue. Those presentations were really informative, and obviously kind of welcome news that we're going to be getting some fresh data again from the State of Caring report later on this summer. I'm going to share my presentation and just put some slides up while I'm talking, but there must be gremlins in the internet system in North Lanarkshire because I've had to switch onto my phone to stay connected as well. So while I'm sharing the slides, I'm going to turn my camera off just to reduce the risk of any potential drop off. Hopefully you can see that okay. Great. So as Sue was just mentioning there, on the Thursday the 25th of May, Wendy Chamberlain MP for North East Fife had her Carers Leave Bill gain royal assent, and that will become the Carers Leave Act next year. Now that's UK-wide legislation, and it gives employees or carers across the country a right to take unpaid leave, and as Sue mentioned, it'll be 5 days unpaid, and there's an estimated roughly 2 million employees across the UK juggling caring roles right now, and as Richard mentioned earlier, that equates to approximately 270,000-ish or thereabouts carers working in Scotland. That will allow those carers to take up to 5 days unpaid leave to help them with those caring responsibilities. Now, while this is a welcome step in identifying and supporting carers UK-wide, in Scotland we're considerably further forward in the recognition and certainly the support of carers than our neighbours south of the border. Up here we have the Carers Act, which was implemented in 2018, which affords certain rights to carers. However, the right to time off work, unpaid or paid, until this Carers Leave Act comes into place, is and has been non-existent. Now, we know in Scotland that of the, whether it's 800, 900 or 1,000 or a million carers in Scotland, we know that only 10%, roughly 83,000 carers in Scotland, get access to carers allowance. Now that means the other 90% of people who identify as carers are not meeting the eligibility criteria for that benefit, and that's either because they're full-time students, they're of state pension age, or they're working and they're earning over the threshold of £139 per week, which is the new threshold set for 2023. So we can assume that you know, a large number of carers in employment in Scotland are probably breaching that threshold and unable to access carers allowance support. As an organisation who are a carer positive employer for the last 9 years and carer positive exemplary since 2019, we feel quite strongly actually that there are benefits to going beyond what will be this new statutory minimum next year when that act comes into place. In our organisation, we provide a range of family-friendly policies and procedures, and one of those is our paid carers leave policy. This affords paid time off for our staff who are in a caring role, and includes myself in that. I care for my elderly parents, and less so my grown-up daughter now. We as an organisation from day one of employment provide emergency time off for cared for people or dependents. And we define a dependent as someone who depends on the employee for care. That could be a spouse, partner, child, parent, or someone else who depends on the employee, for example, an elderly neighbour or a friend. Time off for dependents will normally be for the short term. Employees who are caring will be entitled to 5 working days fully paid carer leave per calendar year, where an employee faces an unexpected crisis. Some examples of unexpected situations could be to deal with the breakdown in the care of a dependent, to put longer term care in place for a child or elderly relatives, or if the dependent falls ill or is taken into hospital. I should say that the right to time off for dependents doesn't include automatic time off for domestic emergencies like the person's boiler's broken down or to help care for their pets, as neither of those examples or other examples like that would involve the dependent directly. But when the situation arises that employee knows about in advance, for example, taking a dependent to an appointment that's maybe a wee bit in the future, they tend to work their hours back. So they'll let us know about it. They'll be afforded that paid time off, absolutely no issue whatsoever, because we want to be a supportive employer to carers in our employment. And they'll tend to say, oh, I'm going to be an hour and a half at that appointment, so I'll just work on that day and the next day just to make up that time. Or in the case of part-time staff, we would look at altering their working pattern to suit that appointment. Other supports that we provide include some of these things. So employees being allowed to keep their personal mobile switched on during meetings in case they're needed at home, having their care commitments taken into account when we're setting meeting times as a staff team, ensuring employees have opportunities to talk to the line manager about their caring responsibilities and how we as a carer organisation can support them. And as manager here, I would absolutely hope that we would be able to do that. Providing opportunities for peer discussion with other carers and regular opportunities to discuss their caring role and possible supports as part of the wider support and supervision agenda that staff receive on a one-to-one basis. Other things we provide in Carers Together are an employee health assured scheme, health and wellbeing sessions that are spread out throughout the year. We're one of the many employers that through COVID took the opportunity to take advantage of hybrid working, and we continue to offer that as an option to staff today as well. We provide an important death and service benefit for all staff equal to twice their annual salary. And we have our staff having a peer support wellbeing meeting on a regular basis where it's just staff who go and attend that, and they talk through issues that might be affecting them within the work or even at home, and no managers attend those meetings, so it's completely confidential and just a peer support for staff to attend that. Some examples of where we've implemented that: we had a staff member who wanted to support their grown-up children with the care of their new grandson. That person worked full-time, 35 hours per week, and like everybody who works, depended on that income. So there was a request for flexible working, and it was really a non-entity. It was a very quick win for that staff member. We were absolutely going to support them to do that, and we condensed the full-time 35 hours into a 4-day working week to enable them to support the childcare arrangements with their grandson. Another staff member, their dad was diagnosed with dementia, and as his condition progressed, there was an ask again to reduce their working hours from 35 to 28. So that staff member was supported just to work 4 days per week, so that they could support and continue with the care for their father. The previous manager before me always said to that staff member to have absolutely no regrets, and to take that cut and to take that time and spend it with their dad, so that they would always have those memories, and take that kind of going forward. Another more recent example is one of our full-time staff members, their father, who was very fit and well and living independently in his own home, had a fall, and then his mental health and his physical health deteriorated very, very quickly over a very short period of time, and he had to go into long-term residential care. We supported that staff member with as many time off appointments as was required to set up that care arrangement. And because things were moving so slow from a social work and social care point of view, we ensured that that staff member could get access to our independent advocacy for unpaid carers service. So our advocacy worker supported that link between our staff member and social work and the residential care home to make that transition for their dad as smooth and as seamless as possible. And he's now doing okay in that residential care home, and the staff member is back working full time within the organisation. In terms of benefits, to you as an employer, there are probably 4 key benefits that I'd like to highlight. We see very, very little staff absenteeism. There's very few sick days in our organisation, and I'm a firm believer that that's because we support people with their home lives, and the paid carer leave and access to appointments for people that they're caring for is one of the ways that we do that. We have a culture of trust and support, and some of the supports that I was talking through around staff peer support, hybrid working, the health and wellbeing sessions that are dotted across the year, ensures that culture of trust and support is fostered and is maintained as much as possible. Our staff feel valued and empowered, and they feed that back to the line managers through support and supervision. So that's very welcome and heartwarming to hear as a manager. And the last benefit that you would gain as an employer is a positive reputation as being a progressive employer who cares about its people. As a service provider, our people are our service. We don't design and create and build products. Our people are our reputation. So it's important to me that they're supported with their well-being. And a final ask from me, I've been closely following, as Richard and Sue mentioned, it's Carers Week this week, and I've been closely following some of the activity that's been going on at a national level. And Carers Scotland have been asking the question this week, are you identifying unpaid carers? And if not, why not? Carers are the largest workforce in our country. As Richard mentioned, saving the economy billions, probably the equivalent of another NHS. And without carers, the entire social care ecosystem would collapse. So I personally believe that it's important that you do identify unpaid carers in your employment. And I think it's important that you support them as much as possible to stay in employment. I would go a wee bit further in urging you, if you're an employer here today on the call, to consider the benefits of becoming a carer positive employer. And our service, as I mentioned, our people are our product. If I was manufacturing and selling cars, for example, I'd want them looking and feeling pristine in the shop window. My staff is our service, and I want them supported, valued and motivated. And that, I firmly believe, is reflected in how they conduct their work with carers in the community. Thank you for listening. Happy to take questions if we're able to just now or later on.
Thanks very much, Colin. Does anybody have any questions for Colin at this point? Nope. Okay, thanks very much, Colin. Now I'm going to ask Kay to take centre stage, and you'll probably see on the screen it says Corinne Thompson. That's because Kay is using Corinne's computer today, but it is indeed Kay, and Kay is one of our lovely directors within North Lanarkshire Carers Together, but also has had a caring responsibility whilst working full time. So I will hand over to you, Kay, to share your experience. Are you on? You're on mute. Just need to take your wee mute off, Kay.
Is that me?
That's you. That's you.
See, modern technology. Sorry, I need to call it. We're all in 3 different offices in case people wonder how we're talking to each other. I'm not as up to date with putting things on screen, so I have mine written down. So I'm just going to be reading wee bits out as I go as a aid memoir for myself. So, as Caroline said, I'm Kay and I'm a carer. But what does that statement mean to you? If I said my name is Kay and I'm an alcoholic or a gambler or a drug user, you'd know exactly what it meant. But to add to the story, I was an unpaid carer. Again, what does that mean? My story is a wee bit different when I say I cared for my husband. He lived in South Lanarkshire and I live in North Lanarkshire. We had separated like 20 years ago, but we kept in contact because we had children and grandchildren. So my husband first started showing signs of illnesses just after taking early retirement. He was 60. He was diagnosed, sadly, with liver cancer, which then progressed through his body to eventually spread into his brain, and this caused a dementia. Fairly normal story so far. I was working full-time in South Lanarkshire with the employer, but I lived in North, as I said. My son's a teacher, my daughter's a nurse in Glasgow, so we're all busy people. So caring's not easy to sort out. As the dementia progressed, he started to leave the house, leaving the cooker on, the telly blaring, and you can imagine what it was like. But thankfully we had really good neighbours who used to phone the family, and one of us would try and get up to sort things out. But as I said earlier, my son was a teacher, so how can he walk out in a classroom of kids? My daughter is a nurse, so how could she walk out a busy ward? So as I worked the nearest, it was often me, it was to deal with the situation. Now, I used flexi leave, holidays, started late, finished late, etc. And my children, of course, they worked out their leave as well. This is really where my employers had to step up. If my husband and I were still together, I could have used a sort of carer's leave to sort things out, arrange care, but not being in inverted commas together, caused my employers to look at the situation, and so we could work something out together. The main problem for me was it was private between me and my employer, but some colleagues just started seeing me receiving special treatment. You know, oh look, there she is coming in late again. You know, you can just imagine around the water cooler the sort of wee chit chats that were going on in the corner. The main, eventually then I had to let some of the staff members know, which made it a wee bit easier, but I could still feel a bit of resentment if I didn't come in first thing and someone else had to cover for me. As time moved on, with his illness progressed and eventually he passed away. You would think that that was that, but no, of course it wasn't. As we were separated, bereavement leave was not the same. So again, holidays were used and eventually I had to ask the doctor from sick leave to help me and the families to cope. I mean, I say this to ensure as you as employers look carefully at your carer leave. Not everyone is a family member. It could be like me, a neighbour or a friend, but they have a caring role. Carers do have rights, which I'm sure your policy follow, but remember, if someone starts turning up late more regularly than usual, disappearing at lunch when they don't usually, they look tired but not as patient as they were, falling behind with their work, snapping at colleagues, don't then start to look down the discipline line. Find out what's the real story, because working together helps both the carer and the employer. And remember, carer rules, I mean, you all know this booklet, What is a Carer? I'm sure I don't need to read it out to you, what is a carer? And as Richard said earlier, we saved, I think he said we saved just over 13 billion a year. So if I had had to give up work, I wouldn't have had money, but I would have saved the government another few thousand towards their bill. I'm still a carer because my mum's 90 this year, but the difference is I don't feel like a carer for mum because she's my mum. Usually Friday, today is my mum's day because there's 5 of us, 5 children, can you imagine? And I usually Friday, I'll tell you the routine. We go to 9:30 mass, we then go to the hairdressers. While she's at the hairdressers, I have to collect her fish out the fish van, and it has to be particular fish out the fish van. Then we go to Tesco and she gets her shopping, and then we go to my aunt who's 88 and we sit and listen to 2 sisters, you can imagine, 190 and 188. It's always just, oh, do you know this one and that one? You can imagine when the chat is, and I have to sit nice and listen and be good. And then I take mum down the road and then we have another cup of tea and then I come up the road. So that's just my mum. So as I said, my mum's not to me, I'm not her carer. Whereas when it was my husband, I felt like a carer. And thankfully my employers eventually came around to the conclusion that we could work together. So as you are employers, please take a wee look at what I said about people and how they change, because there could be a lot of stuff in the background. And as Colin said in his talk, we as carers here are really quite good at doing it, but that's probably because we are carers. What about your organisation? Because health is massive, councils are massive, but there's also the wee local shops. It's not very easy to let someone have care away if there's only 3 of you working. So it's a fine blend of you working out as employers, how it suits you. But at the end of it all, we want to look after our family, don't we? Or our friends or our neighbours. So just take that wee minute to take a wee bit more and look behind the story. Hope that wasn't too fast. And as I said, I didn't have, not like you with all your slides and everything like that. So I hope if there's any questions, of course, just ask me whenever we're allowed to talk. And if I can put it back onto mute, I'll let you go on with it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You know, it really, and I think stats and reports and facts and figures are all wonderful, but really to hear people's experiences, you know, firsthand, is really what kind of hits home, I think. So thank you very much for your honesty and for sharing your story, Kay. So the next part of the session really was to have a bit of a group discussion. And now I'm conscious of the time, that's 11 o'clock at the moment. Would everybody prefer actually to have a wee comfort break just now, to nip away and make a wee cup of tea before we get started on the discussion? Right, fantastic. So what we'll do, that's 2 minutes past 11. So if we can just come back maybe about 10 past 11, just shy of 10 minutes then. That's brilliant. Okay, thanks everyone. See you soon. I think we are still waiting on another couple of people coming back on. Actually, could I just ask if everybody doesn't mind, maybe even just popping your cameras on just for the next couple of minutes? What we feel might be helpful is just to do a wee quick introduction in terms of the organisation that you work for, and if indeed you are carer positive, or if it's something that you're looking to explore after today's session. And once we do that, what we'll do is we're going to be using, it's a resource, it's called Padlet. Alan is going to pop a wee link into the chat, and once we've done the introductions, if you click on that link, it will basically bring up a screen where you're able to contribute and add your comments and feedback. So we do have some questions just to kind of get the discussion started, but obviously any questions or any views or thoughts are greatly appreciated, so we don't have to be rigid and stick to the questions in hand. So that wee link will go in the chat. Don't click on it just now. What we'll do is just do a wee quick round the screen introduction, and then we'll get started, if that's all right. Okay, so first of all, I'll start. My name is Caroline Christie, and I think most of you we have met. I am I'm the carer information. Oh, somebody's. Can everybody pop themselves on mute when they can hear somebody?
Yes. Oh, Caroline, you're on mute now.
Can you hear me now?
Well, seeing it's Friday, I think we're all just a bit frazzled.
It's been a long week. Apologies, everybody. Yes, so my name is Caroline Christie. I'm the Carer Information Engagement Lead, and really this is a piece of partnership working that our organisation and the Carer Positive team do at least twice a year. We recognise, and again, working for an organisation with exemplary status, I am very fortunate. I have conversations almost on a daily basis with unpaid carers that are trying to juggle jobs that have a less positive experience, shall we say. So really it's great to have these events and to support colleagues and local partners, and for them to see the benefits of being a carer positive organisation. And certainly as an unpaid carer, you know, the benefits for myself over the years has been incredible. I wouldn't have been able to have remained in employment if I didn't get support when it was needed. So I'll pass over. So Alan, can you introduce yourself, please?
Of course. Alan, obviously, as Caroline said, Alan McDonald, I'm a carer information worker, that's part of my job, and communication worker as well. That involves our Twitter presence, Facebook presence, some of our media as well. Also, I maintain our in-house systems where we actually register and look after the carer information, so I'm in charge of that. So we've really come on as an organisation in the last couple of years in terms of being able to support carers and things as well, and information we can give to them. But as a carer positive organisation, an exemplary carer positive organisation, they've been great. I'm a carer myself for my adult son and have had to drop things at short notice, and it's been great. It's been very easy to do. Nobody really objects to it because there's things to do, there's appointments to have, as we all know. So it has been a great experience for that, and it's made it much easier rather than kind of having to justify your time away. That's me.
Thank you, Alan. Gail?
I just got back there in time. Sorry, I had got a phone call for my parent actually there. I thought it was nothing urgent, thankfully. Yeah, I'm Gail Scott. I'm the OD Learning and Wellbeing Advisor at the State Hospital Board for Scotland. We're situated out in Carstairs Village near Lanark in rural Clydesdale. We do have, I believe, the first level of Carer Positive Award, and we're interested to progress that further. It's been lovely and really interesting to hear from everyone this morning. It's really, really interesting and quite insightful at times. I have personally myself, I am probably a carer. I have a son who has Asperger's and was diagnosed when he was 6. So I have always worked part-time up until the last couple of years, where I feel that he's able to manage his day better. So I don't recognise as a carer now, but I have in the past. If that's quite a strange kind of mindset, I suppose. But I suppose I'll always be his carer as he grows. But he's 17 now and doing really well. So he's more able to cope. So yeah, it's great to hear from everybody this morning, and interested to get some discussion going as well.
Thank you very much, Gail. Cassandra?
Yeah, so I'm the Social Values Coordinator at SPL Powerlines. We've got our head office in Coatbrig, and I'm in Bath Street at the moment. We've got offices here. We are right at the start of our journey in terms of sort of recognising carers. So this is really, really useful. I can take this back to HR. I know that they've been briefing the board this week on, you know, the forthcoming legislation, and we're going to be having meetings to develop our EDI strategy. So I'll be able to take this forward and make sure sort of carers are on there. And really as well, I'm probably indicative of people who wouldn't recognise themselves as a carer. Like I would just have labelled myself as just mum. One of my boys is deaf. So, you know, I think if I'd have perceived myself in that sort of caring type role, I might have reached out for sort of more support during COVID, where he needed, you know, he's reliant on lip reading, so the mask wearing was a particular challenge for him when he's trying to communicate his needs and sort of get support. So it's been really valuable for me as well. So yeah, really enjoying it this morning to be able to take that forward and provide support for staff here.
Fantastic, thank you, Cassandra. Who else do we have? Suzanne.
Hiya, I'm Suzanne Berkeley from, I'm an Employee Wellbeing Advisor at South Lanarkshire Council, and we have the first level engaged status. Sue's had many conversations with us over the past year. We think we had enough to go for the next level, didn't we, Sue? But we just kept having curveballs. So I'm really wanting to be focused and really go for it this year and pull together. The good thing about that is that we're, sorry if I'm going on a tangent, but we'll, you know, review all our processes. So it's a good thing to do, and it's lovely to hear today what other people are doing, and also lived experience as well. I also maybe never thought of myself as a carer too, and I have a young boy, but it's more that a close family member kind of dramatically had some mental health issues, which meant very much thrown into a quite high level caring role for the past 6 months. So I can definitely understand that, and I have to say my employer has been exceptionally supportive and helpful. And I can carry that story with me as well in terms of looking at our needs through the guidance and the policies too. So sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. You're just meant to introduce, aren't you? That's me.
No, make no apologies. Any kind of conversation in detail is very greatly received, and I think it's fantastic just, you know, getting people's perspectives, and the majority of people on this call, whilst you're here in a professional capacity, probably the majority of us do have caring responsibilities, so thanks for sharing that, Suzanne. Donna, can I pass over to yourself?
Yep, hello, I'm Donna Bruce. I'm the Macmillan Programme Manager for Improving the Cancer Journey. And I guess I've kind of joined today. A big part of my role is setting up these Improving Cancer Journey teams And a big part of the team's role is going to be supporting people affected by cancer, and more likely that it will be their carers. So obviously I've got you, Caroline, on our operational group, helping to influence that. But really, I guess what I'm trying to do is just learn a wee bit more about how, yes, I can support the staff who are carers, but we also work with a lot of employing organisations, because a big part of our role is about working with the communities and organisations to support people affected by cancer. And there's lots of stuff that Macmillan do for employers of people with cancer, but I guess there's maybe not as much literature around supporting carers of people with cancer. So hoping to take a wee bit of learning away from here today as well.
Thank you, Donna. Pilar, apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly.
No, you're absolutely right. Thanks, Caroline. Hi, I'm Pilar St. Martin. I'm the HR advisor for children's hospices across Scotland, also known as CHAS. I'm fairly new on the role, but I'm aware that we are a carers positive. I believe is level 1, but I'm not 100% sure. Sorry about that. Still new, still learning about CHAS. And I think the reason for me to join or just CHAS being involved in this, just to make sure that we keep up, to make sure that we keep relevant policies, relevant, processes to support our carers, because there's a lot going on well-being, about inclusion, equality and diversity, but carers are also part of that. So just making sure we don't forget about that. So it's been great to, see the data, see those examples, to hear what other companies do. That certainly helps us to make sure that we're also, keeping up to speed. The new legislation that is coming is great. So I'm definitely taking note of that and make sure that, pass it to my head of HR, to our team, and to make sure that we, raise the awareness, keep people informed, and, make adjustments if needed, because I'm not a carer myself, but definitely friends of mine, colleagues, and the impact that the employer that cares does and the policies is massive. So yeah, making sure that we keep up the good work as well.
Fantastic, thank you, Pilar. And it's the skill set that carers, unpaid carers, are bringing to the workforce as well. It's tremendous, and it should be celebrated rather than seen as a barrier. So Leona, I know that there's a few of you on the call today. Do you just want to give a wee quick intro to your organisation?
Hi, Kirsty's wanting to do a wee intro. She's the carer connector. And she's been very busy this week with Carers Week. Hi everyone, so I'm the carer connector for Getting Better Together in Shorts, and we've got my colleague here, Leona Robertson, we've got Julie Waddle, and we've got Michelle Clayton. So we work for the adult team, we support carers every day on a daily basis. We are carers ourselves. We do befriending team and we do volunteering, and Michelle does the older adult tea service for us. So we work with carers on a daily basis every day, and we're carers ourselves.
Fantastic, thanks very much, Kirsty. And Sue, Christine, Richard need no introduction. Obviously, we're kind of leading on this session today. But just very quickly, Marion, have we got Marion here? Maybe dropped off.
I'm
I
here,
think she was having. Oh, you're there. I know you're going to close the session for us. But just if you just want to give us a quick introduction, Marion.
Yeah, hi, special hi to Cassandra, who'll recognise me, I hope, and Kay, who should also recognise me. I'm the local MP for Motherwell and Wishaw. I've been for the last 8 years. My role at Westminster is actually as SNP Group spokesperson on disabilities, and I am ashamed to say that for at least a year and a half of that role, I did not do anything about carers. Which seems absolutely ludicrous when I look back. But I was so focused on meeting all the disability organisations and doing all that sort of stuff. And I went into the drop-in in Parliament about 2 years ago, in for 10, 15 minutes. I stayed for 2.5 hours. They had to throw me out. And I was really delighted and privileged to be made the SNP MP Disability Care Champion. And so I've been there. Richard Meaton, I can't go on a meeting like this. I've already seen you this week, Richard. And I spoke yesterday in the debate in Parliament. I'm an employer. I've got my certificate right beside me. I'm a carer positive engaged employer way before I did any of this stuff. And I think it's really important that we work hard together to actually make sure that people recognise themselves as carers. I was briefly a carer for my late husband, and I didn't recognise myself as a carer, you know. And I think the kind of work that that's here today, especially those of you from NLCT, the work you do is just awesome. And anything I can do to help, you know, my door's always open. And thank you for coming along to my Poverty Action Network as well. I mean, it's just so important that we all work together to make life better.
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
This week when we're focusing on carers.
It's definitely the partnership approach, co-production that I think makes North Lanarkshire stand out in terms of, you know, being able to identify, engage and support unpaid carers. So thank you very much, everybody. Colin, Kay, you don't need any introductions. You have already had your moment. So what we're going to do, Alan, if I can ask you to pop the link into the chat. So as I said earlier, this is basically just a wee bit of a way of, obviously we want to encourage as much conversation as possible, so but please feel free, and everything's anonymous, so if you've got any questions or you've got any viewpoints against the questions that are going to be on your screen when you click the link, please give us as much detail as possible, because what we want to do is when we go on to do the next event, make that bigger and better as well. So feedback is always important for us. Alan, can you pop that in the link, please?
It's in the chat already. I put it in.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, it's there.
Right, let's have a wee peek. Here we go. So if everybody clicks and just checks that they see, it should be a blue screen. And it says NLCT and Carer Positive event. Can everybody see that all right? Yep. Okay, so what we're just going to do is I'm going to hand over to Christine, to Sue, so that we can just start some conversations. Please, what I'll do is I'll be taking some notes as well, but if anybody has a question, either pop it in the chat or put your hand up and I'll keep a wee eye out for the reactions. We want to make this as interactive as possible so that we all get something that we can take away from it. Okay, over to you, Sue.
Sure thing. Okay, so hopefully, and I think we thought this would be quite fun actually, just to kind of give people a chance to either or both, you know, have a chat around these questions, but also to pop them in. And if you look at the first one, and you can go between the question screen and back to seeing everybody on the kind of the Teams screen. But if you just if we just sort of look at the first question, and if anyone can't see it, let us know. But the first question is around looking at that issue about identification, and it's how can you enable and encourage carer identification in the workplace. And I can see someone there's already put up, for example, recruitment. Ensure it's part of the recruitment process along with other declarations, which is a really good point. So I think trying to kind of get that message of enabling and encouraging people to recognise and identify themselves right from the very early stages is great. So starting at recruitment's good. Also then bringing that forward into the kind of induction phase and beyond. But does anyone want to say anything else around that, around how they might have had experiences, you know, either as carers within their workplace or as employers, about what other actions employers can take to kind of help carers identify themselves? And we can either speak or chat. Yep, mention being carer positive at the advert stage. That's a good point. It sends a positive message out, immediately tells people that they're an organisation that supports carers. have an information day. Yep.
Sorry,
Explain.
Colin, you've got your hand up.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
right.
as an employer, I think all of these points around recruitment and having something around the kind of job spec and advert is really encouraging and would be welcome. I think as an employer, having something like the "Are you a carer?" information up somewhere, whether it's in the staff canteen, if it's in the office or whatever, or somewhere where staff members will congregate. But I think the point that Kay made was really crucial as well, about employers kind of having that open mind around if a staff member, if a new pattern emerges about them maybe coming in late or disappearing at lunchtime for an hour when they don't normally do that, or appearing tired and exhausted. It's just, it's almost, it should be seen almost like an invitation to ask, do you know, is everything okay at home? How's the family doing, etc. I think that's a really crucial part of helping to identify, because people might not see themselves as a carer or might not know what a carer is. So I think that's a really crucial part that Kay had mentioned.
Yeah, and I think probably alongside that, helping line managers understand what those warning signs might be is really important. So, and kind of also knowing how to handle those kind of sensitive conversations. You know, if somebody, you know, is displaying those kind of signs, that there's a way to approaching how you might ask about that. Okay, thanks. I'm just going to go back, and Alan, you've got your hand up as well there.
Yeah, well, it relates to what Colin said as well, that obviously you can put the things up about identifying as a carer within the workplace. What might also be useful is some sort of link. If you've got information about carer leave or your carer, how you deal with carers in your staff handbook, have a link to identifying as a carer, something like that. If it's a virtual handbook, or have a little paragraph on it, just so that people can identify as that, and they would therefore follow. You know, you have that at the top, the carers leave page or the care information page, and then that would allow people to sort of make the decision and then say to their employer, are you a carer or not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to go back into the chat, the Padlet to see what else. Yes, Information Day, have signage to show that we support carers, have the conversation with the workforce through focus groups or events. Mention being carer positive, raise more awareness, provide more information. Lots of fantastic actions here. Provide information sessions with clear definitions of what a carer is. And I think that's really key, about having that clear definition. And alongside that, sorry, I'm going to come into the team screen again. Alongside that, have carer examples, so that people can actually recognise themselves within other carer case studies. It always helps, I think, when, you know, we're hearing Kay speak and hearing other people who've got kind of caring situations. It's sometimes only when you hear of somebody in that similar role that you actually recognise yourself in there. So thanks for all these suggestions. I'm just going to go back in and have a look. So there's lots there on identification and looking out for the change in work patterns, tired and emotional, absolutely. Yep. Carer awareness training, and that's something that, you know, we can help with, that North Lanarkshire Carers Together can help with. There are lots of resources and organisations that can support employers into kind of raising awareness within their workplaces. Okay, so we're looking sort of to the next question around some of the barriers and challenges. And I suppose the main one there is, as somebody said in the first box there, carers not realising they're carers, which we're hearing a lot about this week and today. And the balance of managers being able to allocate flexible working and carers leave with shift working, where staff resourcing challenges are at their highest ever, and the staff taking up sick leave, unfortunately. And I think that is a question that's being raised in a lot of the discussions we're having, and it's coming up in employer sessions, that it's great to have that positive approach and to have good policies and a great approach to flexibility, but it can be really challenging for employers who do have staff in frontline roles where, you know, shift patterns do have to be met. You know, you have to fulfill service delivery obligations and, you know, being able to kind of provide a sort of level of service to clients. And it's a really difficult one, but it's something that we're finding that employers are actually coming up with sometimes quite different and innovative forms of being able to kind of apply flexibility. We were at an event yesterday where the issue around flexibility was raised, and that actually you can set flexible working patterns in quite a rigid manner. That means they're not particularly flexible if there's no kind of, you know, sort of individual approach to that. So having individual conversations around people's individual circumstances, and you know, looking at ways that you can introduce sometimes very sort of small additional changes to flexibility can make a real difference in being able to kind of change things in a way that suit teams. Anything else that anybody wants to sort of speak about rather than pop in the boxes here? I'll just have a wee look. There's lots of information here. I'm just trying to read through it all.
Case, he would like to come in and speak.
I know I've changed places because nothing was connecting through there. When you're talking about barriers, if you remember, I mentioned my son's a teacher and my daughter's a nurse. Now that is a really hard. How do you work a shift pattern in a ward of 22 people? And as we all know, sadly, just now NHS staff is quite a problem. So it's more, I think, if we can come down to basics like that. And I know big organisations, we have to think of, you know, we get our carer tick and we're this and we're that. But it's coming down to the actual people. And like my son is a teacher and you're teaching a class of 7-year-olds and then suddenly the phone goes. Now they're not allowed phones. I know someone put up phones in allowed. He's not allowed a phone in the classroom. So it's wee things like that that you need to look at for rather than the big barriers. It's the wee things that make the difference. So if you could just look at wee things like that, that would certainly help. Rather than all these wonderful, we've written this and we've written that and it looks good up on their screen. And if you look at South Lanarkshire Council or North Lanarkshire Council, how wonderful they are. And even Marion, I'm sure that the Parliament looks absolutely wonderful. But it's the actual doing it that makes a difference. So when you're looking at your barriers, have a wee think of the small barriers rather than the big barriers.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the very small changes that can make the biggest difference to somebody's life and work, you know, their ability to juggle their work and caring roles. I think it's a bit of a balance with two, though. You know, I think it is still really important to have good policies and to have that, you know, kind of clearly written, because it's like, you know, it's a good safety net for people to be able to, you know, take carers leave if they need it, or to, you know, have that security of within a written policy to be able to say to their line manager, well, actually, I am, you know, I do have a right to this support. But yeah, the very kind of small practical things can be equally as important, and it's not always easy, Kay, you know, for employers to be able to do that. But I think unless they're having those conversations with carers, they're not going to be able to sort out those issues. You know, there's got to be a way sometimes of a kind of a balance in, you know, being able to, if somebody has to, you know, if they're waiting on a hospital appointment, or they're waiting, or, you know, they're worried about somebody at home, if they're not able to kind of be able to kind of access a private call, you know, that makes a huge difference. So I totally agree. It's those small things. And it's not, I don't think anyone's saying it's an easy thing to do, but there are usually ways that employers, at least if they have that conversation, there's always going to be something they're able to do. You know, they're going to be able to think about ways that they can make it a bit easier. At least they may not be able to change somebody's working pattern entirely, but they should be able to accommodate a few additional changes that would help. And sometimes staff teams are very helpful in accommodating, and people will, if they sort of sit and have a discussion about something, you know, within staff teams, they can usually come up with maybe some kind of ad hoc arrangement that might help out their colleagues. So I think there's a kind of balance there between having the, you know, the written stuff, the policies, the dedicated support, but also that additional flexibility around how things are practically managed.
And I think, Sue, it's about encouraging those conversations, encouraging, you know, your staff to share a wee bit, and it's, you know, it's not out of nosiness, it's so that you can support them. Because when you're an unpaid carer, even when you're in a work environment, you're still on call. Essentially, you know, you're not physically with the person you're looking after, but you might get that phone call, you know, that you've got to kind of down tools and go, and even just to have the reassurance that yes, I can go, you know, go along with my day, but know that I can keep my phone on silent, I can check periodically, and having a staff team and having managers around you that support that. It's a difference. It's night and day. It's a difference between being able to hold down a job, you know, and for many carers that have to give up their job, you know, it's about choice. You know, like for example, when I was in the thick of it with my caring role, coming to work was my respite. You know, that my peers around about me, that was my opportunity to actually have honest and open conversations, because I couldn't do that at home. You know, so you want to encourage that environment so that you don't feel shame around having a caring role. Actually, that's right. You know, you want to be able to share some of that, because that's where you get that support network.
I think also from talking to carers over the years, one of the things that strikes me is that just knowing that you work for an employer who understands and is sort of sympathetic and empathetic, you know, and appreciating that they might not actually be able to accommodate everything that ideally you would like, but knowing that they understand and that you can feel comfortable about having that conversation, that goes a huge way to sort of feeling supported. And Cassandra, you've had your hand up for a wee while, so sorry, I'll let you speak.
No, I was just wanting to build on what you were saying there, certainly in terms of policies. I think there's always going to be, I would hope, a substantial part of the staff population who, you know, do the, you know, support carers and other demographics because it's the right thing to do and it's a caring thing to do. But you've also got the issue that a lot of people, they only sort of understand and recognise what they personally experience, and if they don't have experience of sort of a caring role, having these policies and training days and other things sort of helps them understand, you know, the needs of their, you know, their staff or their colleagues, and certainly for us at SPL, there's potentially as well a health and safety aspect. You know, we need to know, encourage people to come forward and identify their caring role, so we can make sure that we have correct things in place to ensure that they're safe at work. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
And language can be really important. You know, it helps in we always say that within policies or within any kind of, like, you know, are you a carer kind of posters or anything like that, have a sort of talk outline that explains what you mean by that. And it might, you know, you're maybe not even using the term carer, you're maybe saying, you know, you might be looking after, or you might be helping to look after someone who is older or frail or disabled, or, you know, has a mental or physical illness. You know, just sort of having that talk outline and then some examples that people can relate to really, really helps. Because we know and you'll know this as well, the term carer gets, you know, misconceived sometimes. You know, people talk about carers coming into the house to look after mum or to help, you know, dad or whatever. You know, it's the term carers can be really misleading, and also people can feel that if they're not in receipt of carers allowance or one of the benefits, then that means they're not a carer. So it's just helping explain, you know, the broad spectrum of caring and how that can apply to so many different situations. That helps. I'm just going to have another wee look. Sorry, I keep coming off screen to have a wee look in the Padlet, which is a really helpful wee tool, actually, isn't it? We've
and what we'll be able to do, Sue, is we will turn that Padlet into a PDF document, and again that can get shared with the other resources, just as a wee bit of a kind of guide for people to refer back to. And obviously there's been some fantastic conversations. I'm just very aware of the time at the moment.
Yes, I know, that's right.
But what we're going to do just at the end before Marion closes is we've got another wee Mentimeter, and within that it's basically just reflecting on today's session, but it's also giving you an opportunity to pop your email address in if you would like Sue to contact you or the team to contact you around taking the next step forward on your carer positive journey. There's also a wee opportunity there where you can sign up if you want to find out more about carer aware workshops, because that's a massive part of what we do. So obviously, you know, on a day-to-day basis, it's about identifying and supporting unpaid carers, but equally important is that we're supporting our partners across North Lanarkshire to understand and give them the confidence to help identify and support unpaid carers. So that's free training that our organisation can offer to any of your services. Touches a wee bit on the legislation because there is a Carers Act. Carers do have rights, and employers and health and social care partners also have a legal responsibility, and carers are everyone's business at the end of the day. So, you know, at the end of this session, that there are certainly plenty of resources and supports between both North Lanarkshire Carers Together and the Carer Positive team that can help you get to where you need to be supporting your unpaid carers within your teams. Sue, I'll just pass over to you before we go over to Marion.
Yeah, sure. And I just wanted to highlight one of the other points within the questionnaire about someone had made the point in sort of actions going forward. It would be good to gather some more of the kind of economic benefits for employers, which is something we're always really keen to do. It's difficult to sometimes get data around that, but it is always really helpful for other employers to hear about the benefits in terms of, you know, reducing absences, in terms of recruitment and retention. So that's something that we're hoping to kind of continue working on. So I think you'll see there that Alan's popped another quick Menti into onto the screen there. If folk want to have a quick go at that, we can then tie that part up and ask Marion to close today's event. So we'll just give that maybe a wee minute or two, Alan. Yeah.
Yes, no problem.
Alan, Gail was struggling to access it again.
It might be as just said that, it might be the external settings that are barred, because I've clicked on my phone and checked it a couple of times and it goes directly to it. You can either do if you, I guess you said not get your phone, but certainly try that again. So some people do have a bar on it.
Are you popping a wee code in the chat again, like earlier on? Because that worked for Gail.
I've shared the screen as well, so
right. Thank you, Donna.
Thanks, Donna.
Yeah, I'll stick the code back in. 1 sec. Copy it from there.
Sorry, that's
Just
not working for me at all.
No.
Shall we hand over to Marion and we
Yes.
can look at the result. We can maybe have a wee look at the results of that at the end. Marion, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much. I was going to start. My hand went up to tell everybody else in the office to shut up because they don't normally when I'm around. I'm so grateful for the invitation for today for two reasons. One, because I think it's really important and it's great to be involved in something like this, but mainly because it's been so helpful. And that's to me, and I hope to all the other employers who are here. What we have to do, I think, with Carers Week especially, is we're trying to move a cultural shift forward. That's for carers to almost self-identify that they are carers and to look for the help that's there that can really help. And to employers, someone's why I was drifting in and out, to try and get out there to employers the economic benefits of actually being carer positive. I didn't know an awful lot about it when I first became an MP, and a certificate says I got it in June 18, which is what 3 years after I first became an employer. And for me, it's really a bit, as an employer, it's a bit about self-interest. I want to retain the good folk I've got and the experience they have. That I provide is continuous and really useful to folk, and that really helps. We're advertising just now for a new member of staff. There's a punt, you know, anyone wants to help me find somebody good to help expand my team, then that goes on the advert. Now, funnily enough, I'd never thought of doing that before, and I think that really does. It might help with the cultural shift stuff I'm talking about if people see that I'm carer positive as well. There was mention earlier on about Wendy Chamberlain's bill. Really proud that I was able to speak in support of it and to sign and be in the bill committee and stuff. And it's really an important step forward. And yesterday in Parliament, when we had the Carers Week debate, Wendy was able to mention how different it is in Scotland. That she's a care positive employer, as am I. We were the only two folk that took part in the debate because they have nothing similar really down south yet, but we keep hoping that they'll actually follow the good model in Scotland and the good model of partnership working that there is here. So you should all give yourselves a pat on the back for that. I think that's a real positive. Wendy's bill, we will keep pushing forward and hopefully try and get paid leave. The reason the government accepted and backed Wendy's bill, and it's traditional down in House of Commons, that if it's a private member's bill, they won't support anything that's going to cost them money. But there's a wedge there in the door, and we can rest assured that amongst others, I'll be pushing that forward as well for paid leave. I don't think I want to take up too much of everybody's time, but again, I don't think it would be the right thing to do without looking forward and hoping that by next year things have improved a bit. I'll be having meetings over the next wee while with a government minister in London, Tom Pursglove, on disabilities, and I keep pushing carers there as well now. And I'm also going to have regular meetings with Emma Roddick. I'll also, when you send me the really useful slides, I've been to lots of meetings like this, and the slides are usually not much copy, and you're quite happy never to see them again. All the slides today had contained really useful information, and I hope you don't mind if I share it with my local MSP and share it with colleagues in the group at Westminster. And if that's okay, I'll do that. Okay. Thanks again. I hope everyone else has benefited from this. I'm very selfish, has benefited from this as much as I have. And thanks again for the invitation.
Thanks so much, Marion. That's great. I think I don't know whether Marion's still speaking or whether she's just frozen. So Apologies if I'm speaking over you. You okay? I think that's probably us, Caroline. If anyone else wants to say anything, though, feel free just before we go. But I would certainly say on behalf of us at Carers Scotland, and I'm sure Caroline as well would say on behalf of North Lanarkshire Carers Together, thanks so much everyone for your time this morning, for coming along. And I think hearing and sharing your own personal experiences has probably been you know, better than anything. In fact, it's always really good to hear people's stories, so thanks for that. So we'll let you get away and enjoy the last half day of Carers Week, and hopefully some sunshine as well. Caroline, thanks again for hosting this.
No problem. Thank you everybody for your attendance today. It's been a really great workshop. What I will say is, if anybody couldn't access the Mentimeter, if you are interested in finding out more from Sue and the team, or indeed from North Lanarkshire Carers Together around carer aware training, please just drop us a wee email, and we'll keep in touch and do our best to support you through the process. But thanks very much everybody. You're giving up the sunshine to come and listen to us for 2 hours, but hopefully you've got something to take away from it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.